consider that versus advocacy research. And, advocacy research having, one of the definitions in the literature being, not communicating a sense of nuance around a complicated idea, right? So it becomes value added is the way to identify good teachers, as opposed to, it works for high performers and low performers, but then there's this error band, right? That doesn't go viral. And so a lot of folks we've talked to have pointed to the widget effect in '09 as sort of when things changed around value added. You see it in Arnie Duncan's report like 2 weeks after it's released. And something like that is very, pithy. It's something people can understand. It's a really clever metaphor. So that's one thing we're trying to tease out, right, is, advocacy research that is not necessarily rigorous. Like, the Widget Report has 150 interviews, but it doesn't have a methodology section, right? There's not a discussion about validity. Yeah, exactly. And, to some extent, sometimes that stuff is commissioned with a goal in mind, right? So one person called it policy-based evidence-making, where you're commissioning evidence to kind of prove a point as opposed to the other way around. So I don't know if you have thoughts about that. Have you experienced that tension in your own work? I know you've done work with Gates and Google, and I'm sure many other funders. If you have any reflections on that tension.
Yeah, I have to say that is not my cup of tea. So when we've been asked to sort of find research to prove a point, to sort of if there's a claim that somebody wants to make, I'm less excited about doing that. It's interesting. So Google, we did actually run into that situation because they're a for-profit company and they've got Google Apps for Education, and there was some stuff that they wanted that we couldn't do. So we said, you know what, we just don't do that.
Right.
The Gates Foundation, I think, is really an interesting organization. So I have been doing work with them for, 15 years. And off and on, like different projects, different program officers, different kinds of research and evaluation projects.
Sure.
And they really try, and they really try and keep a hands-off perspective. And most of the reports that I do for them are confidential, and then I, behind closed doors, sort of give them a very frank lay of the land of their investments, and then they choose to do with that information what they will.
Right.
So it either informs their grant making cycle. But I think there are different kinds of researchers, right? And I think for different purposes, which is really important. I think, and where the center is going right now, because we're not as involved in at the state policy level. We're definitely much more at the local right now. And I am more comfortable right now having our team share information, sort of, the Switzerland of reporting, right?
Sure.
This is what we know. This is what we know. This is the good. This is the bad. And we're going to tell you first so you can decide how to handle this information and what you want to do with it. But, I'm so concerned about, some of the direction that some of these, these almost like mega foundations, right?
Right.
You've got Gates, you've got Chan Zuckerberg, who is just getting their feet on the ground.
Yeah.
And we've been hearing about
Gates people as well.
I know. It's that's going to be an interesting, and it's not a foundation. It's
a for-profit. It's an LLC.
Yeah. So who started that was also in Palo Alto, Lorene Jobs, Steve Jobs' wife.
Yeah.
She started her LLC, Emerson Street LLC, years ago because her husband hated the concept of a foundation. He didn't feel that it was, there were a whole bunch of reasons he didn't like it. But so the Chan Zuckerberg group, they can basically decide who they want to fund, for-profit, non-profit, and they are going to go. I'm nervous because they're going to go really big.
Yes.
Like they're going to make like $100 million investments in things that they're going to flood the market. And I don't know how much they're committed to research and capture versus just these big, audacious ideas to, throw money and see what they get. So I don't know, and I also feel a little out of sorts with the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Because at least there was a message that was clear from Arnie Duncan's administration was so different. We knew what was going on. We had clear understanding. And I think, and a lot of the foundation's work that, we helped with was in support of, the national agenda. And some people liked that, some people didn't, but I liked it. And now I have to say I'm just sort of puzzled. I'm confused about where, federal policy is going. I am.
Yeah, it's a fun house.
Yeah. I don't even know how you begin to handle that.
It's like the opposite problem. It's like no research.
Yeah. And I think that's why I feel more comfortable right now working at the local level, because I think I actually have the opportunity to make a difference. Whereas at the federal level, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. With the climate stuff too, just the devolution to localities. Using their power in different ways.
Yeah.
Than they did. Yeah, that's really interesting. A lot of my passport, I wrote a book, my first book was on the role of Gates and Broad and Kellogg and Ford foundations in ed reform and how they're very different. So this is something I've also been interested in for a while and done a lot of interviews with people about. And it's really interesting in the context of CZI because, again, that's very much like a Silicon Valley approach, right?
Totally.
Is make big bets, but it's the same thing that Gates has done, in small schools, for example. It's essentially the same path in terms of making a big bet based on a theory of change, a structural approach, right? And I worry that the same stuff is going to happen again and again, Maybe the personalized learning won't be as impactful as they hope it is, or it won't be implemented the way that they envision. And I worry that it's the most vulnerable kids that are going to, be affected by it. So, I don't know. That's my bias, I guess, in that space.
I'm fascinated about, your work to study those different foundations because, so now we're working as an intermediary for the Gates Foundation where we actually write RFPs for them and monitor grants.
Are you a super intermediary?
Yes, we are. And I tell you, I've learned so much about being on that side of the fence.
Yeah.
First of all, I learned it's really hard to write an RFP that's clear and meaningful, and we're overseeing this initiative. So we have 13 grantees right now, and just trying to sort of capture collective impact on the work they're doing. But one of the things that sort of makes me sad about the funding pattern that I've seen with foundations is that, schools or districts, they get like these 2-year grants, 3-year grants to do this innovative program, and then the money ends and the program ends, because I studied the Small Schools Initiative for the foundation.
Yeah.
And we went back and we followed up with some of the schools whose grants had ended and done.
Yeah.
They went back to exactly what they were doing before the grant started, and it kills me because I just don't think that's an effective model.
Yeah.
To sustain change. And I talk with program officers at the foundation quite often about how on earth do you build in sustainability to a grant?
Yeah.
And nobody has been able to give me an answer that makes any sense because to be honest, it's really, I don't know if you can do it.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't know, I actually was just finishing a chapter for an edited volume where I argue that, that approach does not work in education. Maybe it works in terms of like product management, but education change takes 10 or 20 years, right? And so Ford is more on that page. Maybe they're doing 3 to 5 year grants as opposed to, Broad is like 1 year grants and you have to improve by 5%, so it's much more of this managerial, technical approach.
Right.
That's dominant, quite frankly, in this space. So I think, that's really interesting, your experience with small schools and Gates. Yeah.
So do you think, do you think foundation